Hajiya Amsatu Alami is the founder and executive director of Maiduguri-based Alami Foundation for Peace and Development. In this chat with Vanguard, the winner of the 2016 John B. Kroc Institute for Peace and Justice's Women Peacemakers says the foundation focuses on reintegrating ex-wives of Boko, seeking justice for victims of rape and rehabilitating former child soldiers. Alami, who retired from public service after 30 years as an educator, says the real Boko member insurgents are willing to lay down their arms, but corrupt politicians, kidnappers, security agencies, hired assassins, all have turned Boko into a money-making venture. In the early days of the insurgency, before the declaration of the state of emergency, there were no reports there. No international or local NGOs were operating. That was when I decided to know whom these boys were. My aim was just to know them. People were relocating because of the violence, and I knew someone had to do something to stop the violence. So I started going to communities where these boys were being recruited from. It was very risky. Sometimes I would sit with them and their guns. At that time, they would go and attack soldiers, come back and disappear into the community, and then soldiers would come with gallons of petrol, spray it on houses, set them on fire, and arrest youth indiscriminately. They did not know the members of the Boko Haram, so to them, all of us were Boko members. That was when I started this. It was very risky. Sometimes the Boko boys would ask me, who are you? Are you not also a product of Western education? So where were you when they were perpetrating this evil on us? Eventually, they became used to me and started telling me their stories, and I listened keenly. They were violent, quite all right, but even then, when they sit down and give you their side of the story, you see reasons in what they are doing. Whatever the reason is acceptable to you or not. Okay, whether the reason is acceptable to you or not is another thing. That is why I believe in the power of dialogue. When you see something happening, engage the other party, sit down together and dialogue to understand why that person is doing what he's doing, and when possible address it and you reach a compromise. Even when a state of emergency was declared, these boys were still kidnapping girls within Maiduguri. They take them from their houses by night and keep 2,000 naira at each parent's door and tell them, we have married your daughter. Yeah? What can this helpless, wretched parents do? It was called Horen Markens, marriage of the Makas. Makas is the facility where Mohammed Yusuf, their late leader, mosque was established. You never heard this in the news. When state of emergency was declared, about 60 of such girls were rescued from their den, but nobody did anything about it. You're talking about a massive adoption. She said as they left Maiduguri, they started the massive adoption of women and girls in response to what they called government arrest and detention of their own wives and children. It was only then we got to know that their leaders' wives, the wife of the late Mohammed Yusuf, the wife of Shikawu himself, their children and others were actually kept in military detention center in Maiduguri. So they went and attacked Bama and arrested some family members of some police officers. Shikawu brought out a video and said to the world, since you have started arresting our women, wait and see what will happen to your own. He then showed the picture of the women with their children in the enclave of the extremists. Only then did the world come to the reality of the situation, because even when they adopted the wives of police officers, nobody spoke about it. Nobody knew. It was then we knew they were responding to the attack on them, and it gradually became a prominent feature of the extremists. For some of the boys who joined later, a motivating factor was getting access to women, because they could easily get access to women and girls who under normal circumstances, even in their dreams, could not go near them. So as they were dislodged from Maiduguri, they settled in Kerenowa, Mate local government as their headquarters. In Kirinoa, we got reports from the locals that they had adopted young girls and women in the villages. It became very rampant, but officially, you never heard of it. One of the largest adoptions occurred in a local government headquarters in Borno. About 500 young boys and girls were taken in one first swoop, and today there is no official reference to that abduction. I struggle to get the parents of the victims so that we can know their names and do something, but nobody said anything. We only got the information 6 months after it happened. So you see the kind of society we live in. The adoption of the Chibok school girl was what opened the eyes of the world. A few days after it happened, we got reports that the girls had returned, but their parents and relatives started reaching out to us, telling us that the girls had not been found. Professor our bill and I came together, supported by the British Council and an organization I worked for. About 13 of us, like minds, locked ourselves in one studio and issued the first press statement that these girls were actually abducted and had not been found. It was that statement that was circulated to all embassies and international media, which gave impetus to the Bring Back Our Girls campaign. Violence continued, and as counter-terrorism operation advanced, Boko became stronger and took over more territories. They were abducting women and girls, marrying them and turning them into sex slaves. One boy would marry 8 to 12 women. We started coming into terms with these stories when the counter-terrorism team started taking over occupied territories. As they advanced, the insurgents run and leave the girls because of the gender-based violence meted on them. Some of the girls decided to come back. As they returned, there is no way for them to stay because their communities had been taken over or are no longer existing, so they come to IDP camps. Some of the rescued ones are taken to detention facilities by the military, where they are screened and released to government, who, after keeping them for a week in the rehabilitation center, send them to IDP camps in their state of origin. During one of my researches in the IDP camps, I came across this girl. They were in a terrible situation, all living in frustration, anger, and dejection. Many of them were rejected by their own families. Some of them were pregnant and some had babies. At first, they didn't want to talk, opening up to me. Being a mother and a grandmother, I started following them up, and gradually I narrated the story of how I got used to certain of their members. Then a kind of trust was built between us, and they started opening up. In spite of the fact that the whole world is living in our community, nobody is doing anything directly with regard to these girls because they may not even know. They just know them to be adoptees or wives of Boko. Nothing else is known, and there is nothing much you can do over what you don't know. Few months after I started interacting with them, some of them gave their testimonies in camera. They said 6 months ago we told Mama Amsatu our story, and today we have not heard it from anybody. So they were happy I could cover them. They started telling me their stories. The first time I heard their stories, I was sick for over 2 weeks. I needed psychosocial support myself. Their stories were heart-rending. A 12 to 13-year-old girl would tell you that she has been married to 3 different fighters, all of who had died, and finally she was strapped with bombs and sent on suicide bombing mission. One said she was living with her husband, who was ideological, and after his death she was forced to marry others, and because she refused, she was sentenced and strapped with bombs. I heard how these very young women were made to slaughter fellow women. It was terrible. Some said they lived like dogs. They were kept in a closed place so that when the fighters come back, it will be the place they go to relieve tension. One told me that when the women were allocated to fighters, coincidentally, one of the fighters was an Amajiri who worked for her. As he recognized her, he said, "Mama, I am not going to hurt you. I am so person. Do you remember?" So at night, when you hear your fellow women shouting, you always shout, but I will do what I can to rescue you. She talks about a stigmatization. She said these women's stories would honestly unsettle you and nobody was doing anything to help. When I told people the stories, they would look at me with disdain and ask what I was doing with such women. So I told my international partners, International Civil Society Action Network, that I wanted to start something. They asked if I had any idea and I said yes. They gave me a small grant and with that I selected 30 of the young women, about 17 have babies. 7 are HIV positive and 5 survived suicide bombing. Each had a unique problem. I created a social network for them to interact among themselves because in the camp they dared not speak to anyone or another, otherwise would say Boko Haram wives are plotting something. Even when their children play with others, people would come and take their children and tell them not to play with Boko children. They were not allowed to use the water facility as others would say Boko wives should not take water from there, especially in the two camps in Maiduguri, so as a separate borehole was drilled for them and they called that borehole water facility of Boko wives. So meanwhile, a question was thrown to this woman and asked, should government dialogue with the insurgents? They said in the early days, they tabled certain things they wanted. I had Mohammed Yusuf talking about inequality, corruption, and bad governance, etc., and said all those perpetrating this on the larger society are the educated ones. So if this is what the product of Western education can bring to us, to hell with Western education. Let us go back to the original Sharia where peace, equality, harmony, and justice prevail. So to him, we should do away with everything secular, including Western medicine, because we have traditional medicine. He went to the extreme. After he was killed, his followers were still advocating, giving certain conditions. They cited the examples of the killing of a number of their men by the police and the injured ones. They quoted the exact number were taken to the hospital, but they were not attended to, but left outside under the scorching sun of Maiduguri, and people who went to donate blood to them were refused entry. These boys bled to death in the hot sun. They told me that government doesn't value human life. If today government is willing, they said they are willing to dialogue. So guys, it's a long one. It's a long one. I just try to not to go into details of what she said, of course, which a lot of us must have heard before. But invariably, whether they are to the dialogue with or whatever, in my opinion, whatever their grievances is, like Nnamdi Kanu, they are agitating for something. The same thing, Showore agitating for something, but nobody's taking anybody's lives. Nobody's taking advantage of anybody. Nobody's using any guest to commit all manner of atrocities, because if what you are accusing the government of doing, you are doing worse because you are taking lives. Of course, like this woman said, that if you listen to them, you'll be able to, whether you want to accept what they're talking about, but that does not mean you have to take lives. You accuse of the government of not doing the right thing because of their Western life, if that is what is all about. But you, that you are not talking about a Western life, but you are taking people's life, taking advantage of these guys. It's neither here nor there. The problem is still with our politicians, our so-called leaders, if they can do the right thing. That is just my own opinion. And someone says that the whole issue is a fallout of a failure of northern leaders hiding under religion. How do you actually maintain multiple wives with their children? Islam is not evolving. That is the principal problem. That's what somebody says here. Someone say, God bless you, madam. I am sorry to tell you this. This war against Boko Haram is not a winning war, because you have said it yourself that some people are taking the advantage of the insurgents to make money for themselves due to their selfish interests. May God strengthen you to do the best. Another says the northern people have not seen anything yet. Too unfortunate. They are wasting our resources on their greed, selfishness, nepotism, and religion. And another says, good, go and dialogue with them yourself. They made themselves monsters and are seen as monsters. How many times have you heard about Christian state this, Christian state that? I still repeat, Islam is not the only religion in the world and can never be. So why giving the whole world headache? There's nothing like ignorance in Islamic activities. Everything done through it is documented in their holy book. And another question thrown to this particular woman says, how do you think these things can stop? He said it can stop. Even the boys are tired of fighting. They are very young boys living in the bush killing. Is that a way of life? No, but then every avenue for ending it has been closed for now, except the kinetic military approach, which will not end the problem. Look at government saying they have decimated Boko Haram. They have finished Boko Haram. And look at women now sitting in large numbers every week to Daula. Where are they going to? And shamelessly, this day, they will say they have killed this number. And I ask, who are those you are killing with when you said you have finished them? So people are playing on other people's intelligence without facing reality. They can't face reality. Why can't they face reality? Those who want to come back, let them come back and hand over their arms. Believe you me, if government does that, you will be surprised at the number of people who will come out of the bush to surrender their arms. People just want to go and negotiate, then bring back few girls, celebrate and enjoy their money, leaving the poor boys wretched in the bush, hungry and hounded and killed every now and then. So guys, let us hear your opinion concerning what this woman has said. She said that how politicians, security agents, others turned insurgency into business, according to her, Ajia Alami. So guys, leave your comment below and let's have your take on this.